Hi there, I'm Katie. I'm the president of the Brewston-Brandonville Volunteer Fire Department Auxiliary, and I'm here again with Chief Adam Hoffman, Chief of the Brewston-Brandonville Volunteer Fire Department. Chief, how are you tonight?
Great, welcome back.
Welcome back. So today I wanted to discuss transformational leadership. And transformational leadership is very similar actually to what we talked about last week. With the spiritual leadership. And really the only difference is it's less focused on faith and that idea of altruistic love or whatever, and more focused on vision, which spiritual was also focused on, kind of getting your membership and your followers to have that shared vision and enhancing intrinsic motivations. I wanted to share I wanted to start by sharing Brewston's vision statement, because I think it's really cool. I wanted you all to see that. So mission to safeguard lives, protect property, enhance quality of life. And the vision is continuous improvement of member skills, abilities to create a team of professionals dedicated to safe operations, excellent customer service, and exemplary firefighting and rescue services. So does that jive with what you and your members work towards every day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, I think we talked about this last time. It's kind of easy for a mission and vision statement in the fire service and the fire department, right? Because everybody, even outside the fire service, kind of understands what you do. We're not here to wash cars, we're here to put fires out. And so, but it is, I think, still important to have a well-defined, well-written mission and vision statement that you can, kind of go back to and remind yourselves and your folks, why you're here exactly. Because it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day minutia of it all.
And that's been kind of a theme ongoing in our last several podcasts, is just how do you keep that motivation? And again, this is kind of looking at it towards a shared vision that's not unique to just the leader or just the members. Actually, transformational is where you lift each other up together.
Right.
And it varies. There's three kind of levels of this Bass and colleagues talked about, where it's at the very basic level that's not transformational. It's called laissez-faire, where it's just like your leadership doesn't do anything until there's a critical need.
Sure.
And so you're more reactive rather than proactive. And then the next level up is transactional, where you throw them a bone and they'll take the bone, and then they throw you a bone and you take the bone, and it's kind of more like a power thing. And
well, at some level, that's how you see a lot of businesses, right?
Sure.
I go to work because you pay me,
Sure.
And that doesn't work as well for volunteer organizations.
Sure, and that's kind of why I wanted to discuss this one, because again, it's very unique to that motivation that folks have when they walk through the door here. And then again, transformational is just that elevated level of where the leader and the members have this shared vision, which is why I wanted to share Brewston's, and I'll stop sharing that now so you can see us. Yeah, but so there were 4 characteristics that they talk about in transformational leadership that the leader has to exhibit. And it's charisma, it's motivation, it's intellectual stimulation, and finally, it's like an individualization that you have to have with each member. So it's not going to be a blanket thing. It has to be unique to each follower, where you're kind of in tune to their needs and their how they exhibit the vision and how they can exemplify that. And one thing that I've noticed that you've done in the last couple of years since you've been chief is you start the year off after elections and after everybody's kind of getting into their roles with a SWOT analysis. And that includes everyone. I mean, the auxiliary is involved in that. The members are involved, the administrators are involved. So what are you looking to get out of the SWOT analysis when you do that?
Well, so let's back up and just define that SWOT analysis.
Okay.
So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Right.
And so SWOT, not the really cool TV program
like
from the
SWOT.
70s, right?
No.
But yeah, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And there's a couple of reasons I like that, and a couple of reasons that I really started kind of pushing to do that. So one, if you need more, you need a shared vision, and we have that. We want to, provide the best quality fire and rescue service that we can provide. But that begs the question, how do you do that?
Mhm.
And so the SWOT analysis is a path to the how. So what are our strengths? What can we capitalize on? What can we lean on and say, yeah, we do these things really well. So that's both a sense of pride, but also, an honest assessment of, we're really good at these handful of things. Then where are you weak? And that gives you a handful of things that you can all talk about and agree on. And when we go through this, all of our members, whether they're firefighters or administrative members, auxiliary members, can bring up any of those strengths or weaknesses or opportunities and threats. And so you'll find weaknesses that maybe you as the leader didn't think of, which is really valuable. And then opportunities. What opportunities do we have to grow our department, to better our service, to better ourselves? And then what are the future threats that we can see? Now, you're never going to see all of them, but and I think of that more as, we understand our operational threats, right? Floor collapse or building collapse, right?
Replacing trucks.
But yeah, we see that.
Catastrophic
Yeah, we see that more. When we talk about threats, we're not talking about operational threats of, a building collapse. We're talking about the age of our fleet, maybe, and this truck behind us. This is a 2001, and so it's legally able to drink and vote and all those things now. So that's a threat. That's at some point it's an aging vehicle. So what that does is it helps put a status on our mission and vision statement. How are we actually doing with this? And then what areas can we improve? And it's an area that, every organization, every business has a mission statement, and generally they're pretty corny, honestly, right? But that's not enough. You have to have the how to accomplish those, and that puts everybody on the same page. Everybody has an opportunity to contribute to that, and everybody has an opportunity then to think about, okay, so if we define this, and in the last couple of years we've done it on a Google Jamboard. So you have little sticky notes, and we made them different sizes, right? And like, oh, there's a big thread or a little thread and whatever.
Right.
And so everybody's gotten to contribute to that and add to
I love
that.
the visual with that.
Right.
Too.
And then you get to see it, and there's some that maybe fit in multiple categories.
And you can do it anonymously too. Like
Yeah,
there were things that
right.
popped up where,
nobody knew who wrote it. Right.
Sometimes to talk about weaknesses, it's difficult to hear those sometimes
Right.
and to address them in the room full of people. So it gives a kind of
especially if your weaknesses can be relatively pointed, right? Sometimes they can be a little bit pointed, and so that that allows you to give everybody on the same page, and everybody also feels like they got to contribute to that, and it gives you a shared vision of your status, where you are, and then what you're anticipating, and then that helps you. Nobody's surprised when we're doing training on confined space, because it was one of our weaknesses that we identified at the beginning of the year.
Right. And I'll say something interesting that as the auxiliary president, when we went through the SWOT analysis, somebody who wasn't on the auxiliary wrote that the auxiliary was a strength. And that was just so cool because, us with our vision is to do everything we can to support you all, whether that be financially or on calls when we're giving relief and hot coffee and all those things, and cold towels in summer. So to see that a fireman or somebody in your part of the neck of the woods is saying that the auxiliary is a strength, that really reinvigorated me. And I think some of my members as well, because it was just really nice to see that we were looked at as a strength, because that's our goal. We want to be one of your strengths.
And I think that when you talked about individualizing your mission and vision statement, this is one way you can do that. So when you list your strengths, everybody's going to identify with one or two of those. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. We are actually, I am pretty good at that. Right. And when you identify your weaknesses, people are going to get ideas about, oh yeah, you're right. Like I probably should take that training. I should be looking for that, because I'm, in their own mind, they're thinking about that. And then you talk about your opportunities and then they think about how maybe they can contribute to that. And they're thinking about the threats. They're thinking about how, they're generating ideas as you talk about how they might mitigate those threats. So it inadvertently helps you individualize opportunities for them
Right, I get
to
that.
excel,
No,
right?
that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so I found it incredibly valuable for us. And just for the record, the auxiliary is absolutely a strength. And having you all has been a real blessing for the fire department and for any firemen out there listening, one of the best things we've ever done. And so I think, having that, just like you said, those little individualized pieces, everybody, I think deep down in their heart, whether they want to admit it or not, knows where they're strong, knows where they're weak. And so if you identify, we have, um, great firemen. That's one of our strengths. And there are a lot of people that are going to sit around and identify with that and say, yeah, not to stroke my own ego, but like I'm a pretty good fireman. And so that helps you individualize that thought.
Absolutely. So another interesting thing in the SWOT analysis is opportunities. And I know during our SWOT analysis, I don't know if it was this year or last year, it was training and maybe becoming a training center.
Yeah.
And I know that was one that you guys kind of capitalized on this year.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that? One of the transformational pieces is intellectual stimulation. And I feel like this was a really big piece of that because it got everybody involved in Philly.
Yeah, it was super exciting. And that was it was a really cool experience to be able to offer that. So we offered a large nationally recognized training right here in little Brewston Mills. And we had, I think, 19 states represented.
So they came as participants in
correct,
the training.
as participants at our house. And we had a really good showing for our guys. The facilities here were absolutely on point. We have a pretty perfect setup, honestly, for what we were trying to do. As far as we have a large bingo hall that's a perfect large classroom. We had, with students and instructors, we had between 70 and 75 people here total from all over the country. Instructors came from Delaware, from Michigan, from Virginia Beach and South Carolina and all over. So, and then the students the same way, and they came from all over the state and all over the country. And we were very fortunate. Shout out to the Gary Sinise Foundation who funded that training.
That was amazing.
It was about a $40,000 training or so. And so we were able to offer it for free. And that's one of our opportunities. We're located within a mile of a major interstate, right in the top corner of West Virginia, between three states. I won't show you the hand gesture in West Virginia, but right in the top corner between three states, right on a major interstate. And we have this giant gravel lot that we own right beside our fire department, which is perfect to set up this was a heavy rescue auto extrication training that is focused on semis and heavy vehicles. And the opportunity to do that was energizing for our people. It intellectually stimulating. This was all new information.
Right.
It directly addressed one of our weaknesses and one of our threats. So we have, that interstate is a constant threat for us operationally. And one of our weaknesses was that heavy rescue capability. And mostly because of the amount of equipment and the amount of people you need to mitigate
and how
that.
to use it.
But that training was supremely helpful. This was the second one from that group that we've done. We had 96 firefighters the year before here inside the building doing one on electric and alternative fuel vehicles. And so this is the second one of those trainings. And one of the things one of our another threat, and Tesla fires and extrications on Tesla or any electric car, it's not just Tesla, can be challenging. And so being able to offer geographically, we're in a good position to do that. And being able to offer that training not only helps train our folks, which is outstanding in addressing a threat and a weakness for us, but also energizes our folks and stimulates them both as a pride thing in the organization, but then intellectually they're getting that training and they're engaged with that, because that's not something that happens every day. Those kind of trainings are kind of few and far between. And so we're very fortunate and very happy, and we're going to increase that. We're planning to do another one this fall and hopefully another auto extrication next spring. And we have a great facility here for that. A big shout out to Screech Owl, one of our local brewery restaurant. They do some catering and they provided the food for us outstanding. And like I said, all was funded through Gary Sinise Foundation, which was amazing.
And who was the company that?
So Training to Perform Under Pressure is the company that provided put on the training, and they're top notch. They're world class. And so that training then you had all these guys from all over the country in our house, and we had a really good showing. So that, in so many positive ways, it was a ton of work. Our captain in charge of training put a ton of work into planning that. But it was all worth it because it just jived everybody together and really helped cement that. Why are we here? What are we doing? And the good things that we're doing.
Right. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I think Adam does a really good job with is he tries to incorporate, and it's not just you, it's your officers too, tries to incorporate mutual aid departments that we rely heavily on. When you're a volunteer organization, oftentimes there's only 1, 2, 3 people available at any time of the day, just because people are working and they don't have dedicated time sometimes to devote to this. So you offer a lot of opportunities to work and train with mutual aid departments.
Absolutely.
And that's in the tri-state area. So that's, Markleysburg and Farmington and Friendsville, Maryland. And so Pennsylvania and Maryland. And I love that because it's just like, and I'm going to brag on you as a leader for a minute, is just, I think that you're not just a leader here. Those types of things that you initiate is uplifting to members in other departments as well, and other officers. And, you work with them, where you're all lifting each other up, which I think is this transformative kind of style. It's just like you working with other officers and other chiefs and other members, and you're, offering this together and working as you do. And I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I can't take credit for that completely, but I do. We really have deliberately fostered that. And firefighting is a team sport.
Sure.
We had a relatively complex heavy rescue scenario set up for our final day of that training. And so we had 48 people in that class, and it took all 48
Wow.
to get through that evolution, and not to mention two fully equipped separate rescue trucks.
Wow.
So this is not something that any volunteer department, whether it's fighting fires or cutting up cars, can expect to do on their own. So
Right.
fostering those relationships and offering that training, we specifically set aside seats in that training class for our mutual aid partners, the ones that we were going to work with all the time. And of course, we set aside seats for our own folks, but that's been a huge blessing to be able to build those relationships, not only across the street, but across the state. One of the instructors is a senior guy at the city of Bridgeport, and being able to, or two of them actually are. And so having that, yes, they're 45 minutes or an hour away, but having those contacts and being, having them as a resource for training or a resource to bounce ideas off of has been outstanding. So
speaking of bouncing ideas, just going towards that intellectual stimulation, I think I've heard you say in the past that, I watched a podcast that you did with another institution, and you said something about how you are so happy when your members come up with an idea, so that you don't.
And I think exactly the way I phrased that was, if you're totally relying on me for the ideas, we're in big trouble, because I can't come up with all the good ideas.
Right, and I love that,
for sure.
Because it plays to everyone's strengths and it motivates them. And that's just coming from not just officers, but firemen. I mean, you get ideas from everybody all the time that you're testing and considering, and I love that.
Well, our folks are engaged, right? That's an easy way. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that, right? If one of your members is like, hey, I saw this cool drill that so-and-so fire department was doing on Facebook, we should try that. Why wouldn't you? I don't understand that mentality at all. One, that's a training you didn't have to plan, which is great, right? They've come up with it. You say, hey, all right, cool, run with it, right? So that not only, why don't you plan that out? You saw it, let's find it out. Tell me what you need. And so not only are they feeling heard and listened to, you're engaging them with the mission, and you're taking a little bit of load off of your normal training person, which is outstanding, but you're also giving them a leadership role in that, which has helped, back to our first podcast, growing new leaders, right? Absolutely. And so that maybe they start with planning one relatively simple fire drill, but that gets their toes in the water for maybe being a training officer in the future. So that's another way you can help them engage with that mission and vision and help grow in your leadership. Right.
And I think everything we've talked about so far, nothing to me seems transactional. I mean, nobody who attended that class had to. That's not a requirement. No one who put in the time to plan that class, there was really no reward other than just doing
Yeah,
it.
and so there are some there, there are obviously intrinsic rewards to that, and there are some extrinsic rewards to that, but they're a little bit a little amorphous, they're a little down the road. So there are some jobs that
Yeah,
you
they're
can
not
get,
immediate,
but those rescue certifications might help you,
Right.
get a raise or something, but it's not that no one's doing that for that reason.
Right, I have
They're
not
becoming
noticed
and I think that's when you talk about the transactional leadership part, it's almost impossible as a volunteer organization to
Right,
operate in a transactional
Right.
leadership structure.
right, because you can't get
Well,
offer them very much.
Right. What about, I mean, I'll give you a free t-shirt, right? And like,
Sometimes that's
that's,
enough for some.
and
When
but
we're trying
that's,
to get outside community members, that
yeah.
sometimes that's how we do
And
it.
the t-shirt is nice and the recognition of that is nice, but it has to,
So much more than
your folks have to stick around. You're not going to stick around for the free t-shirt every year or whatever. So it has to be deeper than that. It has to be more than that. And so that transformational leadership and servant leadership is a lot. It's almost a requirement. Right. Nobody assists any volunteer organization, whether it's the Scouts or the Red Cross or the fire department, because they're getting something extrinsically in return. They might get some
Sure.
intrinsic, and I hope they do. I hope they do. We try to foster that, but we're not paying them, so that pure extrinsic reward is not there.
Absolutely. So I saw there was something interesting about in this transaction or transformational leadership theory. They didn't go into it really deeply, but I thought maybe we could talk about it just within our own entities, men versus women, and how they kind of embody transformational leadership. And they were talking about how women are more enabling. There's more enabling behaviors with women in their institutions, and then with men, it's more challenging behaviors.
Sure. And you see that as personality differences, right? It's one of the big things that we see in the differences between men and women, or there's a significant, like a standard deviation difference between men and women. And this kind of plays to that. That's one of the largest differences actually we know between men and women, that personality difference. So how you motivate folks does change. It is different. Not always. And there are certainly,
There's definitely parallels.
well, they're both bell curves, right? And so you definitely have women that are more on the masculine end of that person, of those personality traits, that appreciate challenge more than empathy, maybe. And you have men that are more on the feminine end of those personality traits, if you will, in quotes, that appreciate more empathy than challenge. But I think if we're painting with a broad brush, I think that's probably true. It works a lot better for men to be challenged. One of the best ways as an adult man to thank another adult man is to ask them for help with something.
Yeah, that's true.
Rather than say, hey, thank you, or buy them a card or get them flowers, right?
That's
One of the
true.
best things to do is say, hey, I could really use your help with this thing. And that
That's a
makes them
big
feel
step.
valued. It makes them feel like, you appreciate and respect the work that they do, or
Absolutely.
the knowledge that they have, or the skills that they have. So that's there definitely is a difference in how you lead those two different groups.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think about how enabling behaviors kind of manifests in our organization. I mean, obviously, we're not challenging one another. I mean, in some levels, I try to challenge my members to, but maybe challenge isn't the right word. Maybe it's enable. Maybe it's to enable them, to lift them, to kind of capitalize on their strengths. And another thing I want to talk about, the individualization piece of this, where it's not going to be the same for each member, the leader and member, kind of like a little bit like exchange theory. You have to individualize your interactions with them, because the way they see the vision or how they apply the vision may be different, or like we talked about in our first podcast, change over time.
Of course.
So to be in tune to that and kind of tailor that to, like, being in tune to, like we said, Jonathan Haidt's moral matrix, being in tune to their moral matrices, and what are they valuing, and how can we foster that, and how can we jive that with the mission as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. You have to know your people and what motivates them and what's important to them, both from a morality standpoint. And I think that colors a lot of why they're here, or
Sure.
what they value.
Right.
And as I think about our firefighters, they definitely are different. And so sometimes sometimes you have to appeal to, a sense of loyalty or sometimes you might have to appeal to a sense of duty or a sense of fairness, right? It would depend, right? Camaraderie. So, and it changes over time. It also changes in situation.
Sure.
So you do have to be somewhat in tune to that.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask one more question of you personally before we go into kind of the strengths and criticisms of this particular theory. And that is, do you think that you're a charismatic leader? How do you see yourself?
I don't know that
Struggle
I'm
with that one personally.
yeah, I don't
So
know that I'm particularly charismatic. I don't know that that's true, right?
the charismatic influence. So
yeah.
if you talk about being an influencer, maybe we take the charisma out of it because that's kind of like an interesting personality trait. But if you call yourself an influencer, would you be more in tune to the?
Well, I think if you'd asked me that and that word has such a weird connotation now with
It
the
does, no,
social media influencer, and that's a totally different
does.
thing. But
it does.
maybe in some ways, influencer might be a better word, but I don't
Right.
know that I'm particularly charismatic. I'm not the life of the party, or I'm not
Right.
that guy. But I think that actually probably is somewhat of a criticism for me of this
Mhm.
theory,
Me too.
is that you don't have to be charismatic necessarily. Now, you can't be a complete curmudgeon in most
Right.
organizations, right? So
Right.
you have to have a little bit
And you
of,
have to be able to speak.
and you have to have, right, and you do have to be able to articulate your thoughts clearly. That part is true.
Right.
But I know lots of people that articulate their
But you have to
thoughts
be a
clearly
bit politician about it.
that aren't necessarily
Right.
charismatic.
Sure.
And
I'm
you
like,
know, our past chief actually is he's a very intelligent guy, and he
Very
communicates very,
well-spoken.
very well spoken. But I think it is hard. He's an introvert, so I don't know
He
that
is an introvert.
I
He
don't think you
is-
would
is.
classify him as charismatic. Now, he is very funny, and he is a heck of a nice guy.
Yes, but he speaks
he's-
when he actually, one thing we really loved about him was that he doesn't speak until he has something to say. And when he has something to say, everybody is listening. And you could hear a pin drop in the room when he had something to say. We're all like, because he's kind of soft spoken, so everybody's leaning in.
Everybody
Like,
has to, yeah.
what does he say?
That's attacked, right?
And everybody's like, ooh.
So I don't know that, I
Many
don't
like,
know that I
"Ooh."
agree with the charismatic,
Sure, no, I
requiring to
agree.
be charismatic piece. I don't think that that's true. I think that in functional hierarchies, which we're as leaders hoping to create,
Mhm.
the top of a functional hierarchy isn't necessarily charisma, although it can certainly help.
Sure.
If you are charismatic, you probably get an advantage here. But it's competence that rises to the top of a functioning hierarchy,
Yep, I
not
agree with him.
so, and that's competence in multiple ways. I think we've talked about that
Communication
too.
being a high one.
Communication competence, EQ, IQ,
Mhm.
technical skill.
Right.
So you have to have some competence in multiple facets of that, because you can be the technically most proficient guy in the room, but still be a jerk and not
Right.
get there. So
back to skills theory a bit.
so right. So I think you have to have skills in multitude of different areas.
Sure.
And if your hierarchy is functional, the people at the top of that hierarchy are going to exhibit some competence in multiple areas there, especially when you start talking about like senior leadership roles, like the chief's role or a president's role, something like that. It's not enough to just be in one or two areas. Now your line officer guys or your senior firemen, they might have one or two of those, but as you get higher up, you have to start to understand the emotional components of that and the people
Mhm.
parts of that
Right.
more than you do at the, not that it's not helpful at any level, but you have to understand it when you start to get to the top of that hierarchy.
I really, this theory to me is really interesting, and I really like it in a lot of ways because the four, they call it the four eyes, although I didn't specify the eye parts of each of these, but each of the eyes kind of lends to a different theory we've already talked about. So charisma being a trait theory,
Mhm.
and motivation being, I mean, pretty much all of them. And then motivation being behavioral,
Mhm.
intellectual being, I don't know, when we talked about competence, I'm blanking on that one. And then the individualization kind of going back to spiritual, because that we kind of talked about that last time. And we've talked about that in other theories as well. So I kind of like that. It just kind of weaves all those together. And again, I still see this underlying kind of moral matrix weaving through all of these theories, where it's just like you kind of have to see where your members lie on those things. And that's always seems relevant with all of these. Another criticism of this theory is that it emphasizes vision, but it doesn't really say who. So who are you, or who is it that's able to say, well, this vision's better than the last one, And I think at least with our situation, we vote for that kind of stuff. So we get a group voice for most of those things. So it's not just like Adam saying that the vision's better, although you are the one that's kind of facilitating and fostering vision. But, at the end of the day, we vote for most of those things. Like we vote to do or not do things that jive or don't jive with the vision. Would you say that that's
Yeah.
true?
And I think if you're going to redo your vision, or if you're not sure about your vision, the only way, if it's not obvious to the organization what your mission and vision should be. Now, I'm not talking about wordsmithing here. I'm talking about actually establishing a vision. Wordsmithing should be done by committee probably. Sure. But if you're trying to establish a vision, there's probably two ways to go about that. So the first way is, as a group, as a team, you sit down and say, what are we doing here? What should we be doing here? And everybody throws some ideas out, and you kind of take that and mold that into something that's coherent. The alternative to that is a more probably entrepreneurial way of looking at that, where as the leader, you would establish a vision and rally your troops behind it.
Okay. Yeah,
and you could see that from like an Elon Musk, maybe kind of, and he's establishing the vision of like Tesla, maybe.
Sure.
And he's getting everybody kind of on
somebody
board.
Has to get that,
right?
Yeah, when you establish an organization. Yep, I see that.
And so, that kind of, so there's kind of two ways to do it. In an established organization, it would probably be almost disrespectful not to have group input on that. In a new organization, when you're starting up a business, somebody has to kind of come up with that. Now it's going to evolve and it's going to change as you onboard people and things, in the organization change, and that's okay. But somebody has to kind of start the ball off on that, and so that's usually probably the head person, whoever that is. And so that's how, if you have to change it, that's how I would go about it, would be to bring the group together and say, okay, I don't know that this is working like we thought that it was working, and we should maybe change some things or alter the way we're looking at our mission here.
Yeah, I agree. So the very last criticism of this theory. Okay, so what generation are you included in, Adam?
I'm actually
don't age yourself, but
I'm an early millennial, so I would be.
You're a millennial.
So, and I'm border with Gen X, which doesn't form a lot of who I am too. So I'm not. So I think the millennial generation varies a fair bit from early 80s through that ends in early 2000s.
So I too am a millennial. Help me out here.
A millennial.
I'm a millennial. Thank you. So the interesting criticism of this theory was that, hold on, I'm going to read this one because I don't want to get it wrong. This theory of transformational leadership will not work on millennials because millennials are less willing, or maybe less willing, to collaborate with others to achieve common goals. By the way, not cited. So I'm not really sure where that came from.
Sounds like somebody not so well-rooted opinion.
Do you see that with millennials? I mean, there's definitely shifts, obviously, over generations. There are shifts. And we've even seen that in our department between boomers and earlier, and then millennials, and then the Gen Zs. Like, we have seen that. But the unwilling to collaborate, like, I'm personally.
No, and I don't think that's true at all. I think what we're seeing in the younger generations, the millennials and now the Zennials, the generation after them. I'm in that early millennial group. That's a lot, it's a lot more Gen X there, right, than some of the later millennial groups. But I think that's patently false. But things have changed in society.
Sure, so and I don't disagree with that, but that seems like a very
that's a really broad brush, right? And things have changed in society. There's a lot more demands on people's time. And the other thing is that you don't need civic organizations to make friends in your community.
Right.
And
Well, that's one of the
community
big downfalls here.
very different now
Right, it does.
than
Right.
it did in 1960.
But
So,
collaboration
you know,
just-
you
it
have an
doesn't exist.
online community, right? You have online communities now, and you have, you know, your friends, you can talk to your friends from all over the world in real time. And all of that is so much simpler than it
Sure.
was,
I
you
agree.
know, in our civic community heyday, if you will.
Mhm.
But I find that to be not true at all, in that we've done a really poor job of describing and explaining the missions of our, if you feel that way about the millennial generation, then I would put that back on you as a leader and say, well, what are you doing to challenge and pull that generation into your organization? Because millennials are just like anybody else, and they're like any other generation in a lot of ways, right? It's not, we didn't reinvent the wheel all of a sudden in 1982 or whatever. So it you know, it still requires the same thing. Now you're competing with a much different thing than you did before. So you have a lot more organizations out there that offer, you know, social interaction, whether it's online or in person. But that's one of the things that we really strive to do here, is to create a welcoming environment, an environment that is important, and an environment that has clear mission, and create that kind of that brotherhood, that family feel
Purpose.
here, and purpose. And so we do try to provide that, and we are deliberately reaching out or extending our arms to, you know, the millennial generation and the zennial
Yeah,
generation.
you guys go to schools and you've
Of course,
and
we
you
go to
pick the
schools,
brains of some of our like junior firemen about, you know, what can we do to get your buddies in here?
right?
What can
What
we
would
do?
you, right?
Right. And
Absolutely.
I've definitely heard you have those conversations, and I have too with my junior members.
But no, you're competing against a different thing than you did in 1960.
Sure.
You're not competing against, you know,
The Lions Club.
right, exactly. You know, well, in the
Right.
50s and 60s, you know, it was the Lions Club, the Masons,
Right.
you know, the Elks, and the
Sure.
fire department. And that's, you know, so every
Absolutely, yeah.
man in that
Sure.
era was a member
Part
of
of
at least
something,
one of
yeah.
those organizations, essentially,
That's
right?
so interesting.
Because
Yeah.
or the church, right?
Well, yeah.
And or the church, and oftentimes more than one of those organizations. But now you're not competing against
So
4 or
interesting.
5 civic organizations in your
But
community.
to say that millennials are bad at collaboration, I
No,
think is a
No, and in a
misnomer.
lot of ways,
it's
I
a
think the
misnomer.
millennials are actually much better at collaboration,
Mhm.
communication than their previous generation
I would
counterparts.
argue that too, but
Because
I'm
they
probably
are,
biased.
but they're used to constant and continual
Right,
communication.
right.
We didn't do that 50
Right.
years ago.
No,
We had
no.
one meeting a month, right?
Mhm.
I have a running text message string with my line officers that
Right.
never really stops.
Right.
And it's just always just texting things, whether it's pictures or problems or
Memes.
just, hey, like, yeah, just make memes back and forth, or like, hey, check out this article from
Right.
this magazine, or
Right.
whatever. But it's a constant running stream of,
Sure.
you know, whatever. And so in some ways, our communication is much better than it would have been where we met once a week
Sure.
in person for an hour. So, you know, that's a big difference, I think. So I would say that no, our millennials are not bad at collaboration or communication. That's, I think,
I would like to see where the author cited that.
well, it's telling to me that it is not cited. It is telling. And then, you know, as a leader of an organization, you better figure out how to communicate and collaborate with them.
Well, and the same
Because
is
not
true for
only-
older generations,
Right.
we're trying to figure that out as well. You know?
But not only are not, when I think that's really important for the older generation to reach down and figure out how to do this with the millennials and with the zennials, because not only do you need them to help staff your organization,
Mm.
you're going to give your organization to them one day.
Sure.
So you better start teaching them, training them up, you know, and
Collaborating with them.
getting them some
Yeah.
knowledge and getting them in the door, because there's going to come a time in the not very distant future
Right.
that you're going to hand the whole organization to them. And
And
so,
you have to trust that.
and you, right, well, if you want any influence on what it looks like
Yeah.
in the future, you better start reaching out. And so I think that's as much on our organization and our leaderships in our organization. Of course, the millennials could do better, and so could every
Of
other
course,
generation.
no,
I'm not
saying that
I'm
we're
not
perfect
defending
in
them
any
that they're
way.
perfect in any way, or the zennials,
Right.
or Gen X for that matter.
Right, right,
Every generation has its
Sure,
quirks and its
of
problems,
course, of
and
course,
it's
of
whatever.
course.
But you know, if you're a leader of an organization, you better specifically start reaching out to these groups. I'm almost 40, so it gives you an idea of the millennials. we're not 18-year-old kids. The millennial
No,
generation
we're
are
not
turning
sitting
40 now.
TikToks
Right,
all
yeah,
day.
we're getting ready. We're getting ready for our colonoscopies anytime now, and so we're next in line to take over these organizations as the
And we
senior
are.
leaders, and we're doing that. Right?
Yeah, so I just want to leave with one quote before we go, and that quote is by PJ Fleck. He's a coach of, I think it was college football, a couple different organizations. He said, "Bad teams, no one leads. Average teams, coaches lead. Elite teams, players lead."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to leave everybody with that, because I think that really embodies this transformational leadership theory so well, where you're just working with alongside everyone, as the guide, but not necessarily as the superior, not transactional.
Well, sometimes one of my favorite opportunities as chief is when I get to go to a scene and they're good, it's under control, and I get to just go put on an air pack and go have fun, tearing out walls or putting water on fire or something. I love that. I don't need to be the leader, and at some level in a leadership role, if you're constantly finding yourself having to always be the leader, it's telling that you're not. It should be telling to you that you're not fostering that enough. You're not doing enough to make sure that you're
The four eyes are met.
exactly. And so I love that. It's one of my favorite times as a chief. It'd be like, hey, oh, we're good. Okay. Hey, you have fun. You have fun. You keep running the show. I'm gonna go, go fight fire. And if you need help, I'm here, but otherwise you're doing a great job. And I think there's some success in that for you. And when your guys start taking initiative to do things on your own, on their own, and you step back as away from the direct supervision role, as we talked about with the
is that continuum from
the continuum of leadership, right? And so where you're not directly supervising, you're backing yourself off to the more advisor role. Yeah, the pathway. And that's right. And you step back to the advising role instead of the directly supervising role. And now as a leader, as you get to advise your other leaders, man, that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I echo that. I feel the same way when we have a fundraiser and the girls are just running it.
Y'all doing great.
Girls are just running
y'all are doing great.
Well, I'm gonna go,
grab
take
me.
some messages.
Yeah.
And
Grab me if you
a
need
Cheeto.
help.
Yeah. And I'm always around, of course.
Yeah, well,
I'm
here to
always
work,
there,
right? And it's not a matter of like I'm not gonna
refreshing.
go sit on my butt on the couch, I'm gonna
I'll
go do some work, right? I'll go and instead of having to,
or I'll work on
be
the
the
next
person
event,
on top.
right? Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chief Hoffman, for joining us
Thanks for having
for episode. I think this is 4. I don't know. I'm losing track now, but we'll see you again. See you again next time.
All right.
Thank
Thanks for coming.
you. Have a good one, everyone.